जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी यशोदनंदन ब्रज जनरंजन यशोदनंदन ब्रज जनरंजन यमुनतीरावनचारी यमुनतीरावनचारी जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी यशोदनंदन ब्रज जनरंजन यशोदनंदन ब्रज जनरंजन यमुनतीरावनचारी यमुनतीरावनचारी जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य श्रोत्र सत श्री श्रीमद हिज डिवाइन ग्रेस श्रील एसी भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की ISKCON फाउंडर आचार्य BBT फाउंडर आचार्य श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य श्रोत्र सत श्री श्रीमद हिज डिवाइन ग्रेस श्रील भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती ठाकुर श्रील प्रभुपाद की समवेत गौर भक्त वृंद की नामाचार्य श्रील हरिदास ठाकुर की प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की मायापुर धाम की नवद्वीप वृंदावन धाम की गंगा मैया की यमुना मैया की भक्ति देवी की तुलसी देवी की ISKCON वर्तमान गुरु वृंद की गौर प्रेमानंदे all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees. Hi everyone, thanks for coming for the Saturday Satsang program. It's actually very nice to start the program after a very nice kirtan by Mataji. So it's very in line with the topic that we are going to discuss today. It's about higher taste and how higher taste can lead with positive engagement. That's what we are going to speak today. So we are speaking from Bhagavad Gita. This is the wisdom book spoken by Supreme Personality of Godhead Sri Krishna. So this is from chapter 2, text 58. If devotees can repeat. Yada samharate chayam kurmongani vasarvasaha Indriyani indriyardebhyas tasya prajna pratisthita. Translation: one who is able to withdraw his senses from sense objects, as the tortoise draws its limbs within the shell, it's firmly fixed in perfect consciousness. Is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness. So the purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada: the test of a yogi, devotee or self-realized soul is that he is able to control the senses according to his plan. Most people, however, are servants of the senses and are thus directed by the dictation of the senses. That is the answer to the question as to how the yogi is situated. The senses are compared to venomous serpents. They want to act very loosely and without restriction. The yogi or the devotee must be very strong to control the serpents like a snake charmer. He never allows them to act independently. There are many injunctions in the revealed scriptures. Some of them are do nots and some of them are do's. Unless one is able to follow the do's and the do nots, restricting oneself from sense enjoyment, it is not possible to be firmly fixed in Krishna consciousness. The best example set herein is the tortoise. The tortoise can at any moment wind up its senses and exhibit them again at any time for particular purposes. Similarly, the senses of the Krishna conscious persons are used only for some particular purpose in the service of the Lord and are withdrawn otherwise. Arjuna is being taught here to use his senses for the service of the Lord instead of for his own satisfaction. Keeping the senses always in the service of the Lord is the example set by the analogy of the tortoise who keeps the senses within. So I'm going to chant some Mangalacharan prayers just to invoke the blessings of our Gurus. Om Ajnanatimmirandasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupah Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunadhanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Visakhan Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesa Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Krupa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So these are the like whatever the texts that I have recited up to now is from the series of questions that Arjuna asked Supreme Personality of Godhead Sri Krishna about what are the. So he asks like different questions about a self-realized soul. So how does he speak? How does he walk? How does he sit? Like that there will be a text, like in text 54 he'll ask. So just to give a brief introduction. So this setting of like whatever is going on here is between two parties, Kauravas and Pandavas. So Pandavas are devotees of the Lord who are like following the rules of dharma very well. But Kauravas are those like who are not going against, not going to with the will of the Lord. So there is a war, Kurukshetra war, that is being, it's about to begin. So before it begins, the warrior from the good side, Arjuna, he is most competent, one of the best archer that is there in that world. But he goes under some limitations, like identifying the other party as like with the bodily conceptions, like saying they are my gurus, like my skill masters, they are my relatives, and so on and so forth. And then, so whatever he is supposed to do, he will not do that. Like karpanya dosho pahata svabhavaha pruchhami tvam dharma sammuda chetaha yasreyascha nisitam bruhitan me sishyaste mam shadimam tvam prapannam. So the Gandiva bow with which he has to fight, it will slip from his hand because of the anxiety, the kripana behavior that he will undergone into. Then Krishna will take the cart in between the two parties and speak with him what's going on and all that. And first, in the first two chapters, this is the second chapter. First chapter, he let Arjuna speak his mind, what is going on, and then Arjuna opens up like saying how he's prone to this kind of kripana behavior, and he's not able to take a decision, and he's ready to abandon his duty. So Krishna then, in the beginning, he educates Arjuna about the science of soul, first saying him that you are not body, do not identify yourself with the body, you are soul. And then he comes to the point of explaining about how self-realized souls are. So the reason why this setting is being said is because as Arjuna, we are all, like every jiva on this planet is actually in battle. So the battle is, everyone is trying to fight with the senses and the mind and the material energy, and there is needs, there are dualities that are pulling at different directions. We are all in constant struggle. Dualities are like, if the weather is hot, we need we are craving for a cold shower, and when the weather is cold, then we keep heaters and warm it up. So all these dualities that are happening, Sita Ushna, Sukha Dukkha, Labha, Labha, Hani, you can say. So Labha Labha, Jaya Jayo, again victory, defeat. All these dualities are actually affecting every jiva that is present and is constantly under suffering. So Krishna is actually saying to win that battle of life, you don't need to completely leave the battle and run away. Even while holding the bow and fighting with the opposite army, you can still be self-realized. So this is the discussion that comes into this chapter up to here. And in that series, then Arjuna gets really curious, and he asks, oh, you are saying about these self-realized souls, what are his symptoms? He'll ask some questions. How does he speak? How does he sit? And so on and so forth. So, Acharyas told that we are actually discussing today about the third question, how does he sit? So, in asking how does he sit, so what Arjuna meant and what Krishna is going to say is how a self-realized soul be situated in that path of self-realization, even though his senses are affecting him, even though it won't affect him directly, but the situations that he has and a normal material soul has is given the same set of situations. But how is he able to sit? That means situated in that situation. And how is he able to restrain his senses from the sense objects? That is what Krishna is going to say about. So in this verse, Krishna gives the example of tortoise. Like yada samharate chayam kurmongani va sarvashaha. So Krishna gives the analogy of how tortoise can retract its limbs and then release it according to the surroundings present. So in the similar way, tasya prajna pratisthita, when Krishna is telling that a self-realized soul who is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness will withdraw the senses from the sense objects which is not in favorable with Krishna. So that is the series of 3-4 slokas that Krishna will tell, and the concept of Yukta Vairagya is being indirectly presented here. So Prabhupada in the purport, he says the test of a yogi or a devotee, so is that he is able to control the senses according to his plan. So here even during the sadhaka phase, like when we are trying to, okay, we realize that Krishna is the Param Bhagavan, Param Satya, and we are trying to follow in this path of self-realization, which is like unalloyed devotional service onto the Krishna. Even then, we are affected by these temptations of the material energy. So how do we have to act is given in this verse. So the test, Prabhupada is saying that even when he is situated on that platform on the path of self-realization, so this test is what like makes like a sadhaka will go to the other side of the tunnel or not. So that is when he is being tested with these sense objects, then he will retract his limbs as a tortoise. So that is what is being said here. And Prabhupada compares like senses to a venomous serpent here. The senses are compared to a venomous serpent. If you see venomous serpents, like I used to like live in Sri Salem. It's a forest area. You know, a snake is venomous when it's so it goes in every which direction it can, and it hisses like rapidly. So here senses are compared to that. And a yogi or a devotee, his success in the path of self-realization comes in controlling this, vicious snake, venomous snake. So what he does in this analogy is that a self-realized soul never allows them to act independently, and he follows, Prabhupada says, do's and don'ts. So this is very important point that we have to remember, that one way to restrain senses is actually we do not need to invent a way, but is given in Shastras. So this following do's and not doing don'ts is very important, because if you violate that, you are making the senses go out of control. So what are the do's and don'ts that are given? Majorly, we try to control like whatever the senses and the temptations are there. The main do's that are given is chanting of the holy name of the Lord. So just before like 15 minutes you heard like Mataji singing. We were all sitting in an evening here, and there were many names of Hari that were being chanted here. Like there was Vittal, there was Panduranga, there was He Nath Narayana Govinda. So here we were like chanting, and like Krishna actually tells to Narada in Kali Yuga, he says that today Badrinath Samaraja is saying in the class, I think, Balaram Prabhu mentions this. Naham tisthami vaikuntha yoginam hridayastada madbhakta yatra gayanti tatra tisthami, Narada Vishnu says. That is like, I always don't sit in Vaikuntha, or not in the, like I don't reside in the hearts of the Ashtanga yogis, but where my devotees sing and speak of my glories, there I will be. This is the assurance Vishnu gives to Narada. So here we are actually controlling the senses by dovetailing our interests towards Krishna. That is the sanctified what is that? Sanctified prescription that is given in Shastras. And the don'ts, there are 4 don'ts that Prabhupada given us: no meat eating, no gambling, no intoxication, and no illicit sex. So all these are linked with the major temptations of senses. And once one regulates this, then he already is actually dovetailing all these towards the sanctified parts. Like instead of no meat eating, we have a nice delicious prasadam, and no illicit sex, we have sanctified way of marriage, and restricted restricted way to have sex, and no gambling. So instead of gambling and letting your senses go and always being in anxiety, we live a life of simple living and high thinking. And instead of intoxication, we have like Harinam, we have a nice kirtan, and we completely be high in actually speaking about the glories of God. or hearing about Krishna, or chanting his holy name. So all our interests can be dovetailed in Krishna consciousness. That is what Prabhupada made sure of every temple is. If you see any of the Indian temples or South Indian temples or so, majorly you will have a darshan, you have some nice kirtan and stotras going on. But Prabhupada made sure that every ISKCON temple has to have Krishna Siksha, the education about what is the supreme truth and what is Lord, and chanting, and Krishna Prasad, and Krishna Darshan. So there are 5 things that Prabhupada made sure in every temple. So these actually we can dovetail all our interests and all our, the typical sense gratificatory, temptations that a material individual has. Like if you see at the current civilization or like the current world, people are completely driven mad with these things. Prabhupada mentions in the purport that people are driving themselves mad with these temptations. So the senses of a Krishna conscious person will be used only in the service of Lord. And whenever there is another material object which is not related to Krishna, you will retrieve it. A Krishna conscious person will retrieve it as a tortoise retrieve its senses, its limbs in its shell. So that is the text 58 that Krishna is saying in comparison of with the tortoise. And in text 59, Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehinaha rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. So, though the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, the taste for sense objects remains. But ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. So here Krishna tells about Rasavarjam Rasopyasya Param Drishtva Nivartate. So this is the title like we chose here. So by ceasing such engagements, how you see such engagements is by experiencing a higher taste. Then he is fixed in consciousness. So the purport, I'll go through the purport of this. Unless one is transcendentally situated, it is not possible to cease from sense enjoyment. The process of restriction from sense enjoyment by rules and regulations is something like restricting a diseased person from certain types of eatables. The patient, however, neither likes such restrictions nor loses his taste for eatables. Similarly, sense restriction by some spiritual process like Ashtanga Yoga in the matter of Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, etc. is recommended for less intelligent persons who have no better knowledge. But one who has tasted the beauty of the Supreme Lord Krishna in the course of his advancement in Krishna consciousness no longer has a taste for dead material things. Therefore, restrictions are there for the less intelligent neophytes in the spiritual advancement of life, but such restrictions are only good until one actually has a taste for Krishna consciousness. When one is actually Krishna conscious, he automatically loses his taste for pale things. So, here Krishna says, so, Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehinaha. So, though embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, the taste for sense objects remains. So, there are many processes for, in yoga that are going on, which are trying to forcefully restrict senses. When Krishna gave the example of Kurmangani, the limbs of tortoise, he did not give an example of cutting off limbs or not completely engaging or so. The tortoise retrieve its limbs, but also it can release according to the environment. So this complete stopping or trying to forcefully restrict from the materials or the temptations of senses, you can do it by this Ashtanga Yoga or so, but the temptations, what is it there? The taste for sense objects, it remains. So here the example of Prabhupada gives the example of a diseased person. Like if many of our Indian families has someone having diabetes, So you know that like they cannot take objects which are like having high glycemic index, but they do it forcefully. But the temptation to eat it will not be gone. So even you are advancing in this Ashtanga Yoga, these temptations you will not lose. So there is an example in Shastra, in Ramayana, the story of Vishwamitra, where he undergoes these severe austerities in a process of becoming Brahmarshi. But after, there are like several stages that Brahmarshi Vishwamitra goes through. But in one of the stages, when he is so austerely performing tapasya, then Indra sends Menaka, right? Menaka. So then Vishwamitra completely, like he gets attracted to Menaka, and then he falls down from his path, and he actually like deviates from the path of yoga for 10 years or so, and then he will beget a child and so on and so forth, and then later he repents. So this is also, we can see that what Vishwamitra went through was like a forceful process of like, numbing the senses or like putting down the senses. So that it's not easy because the temptations are not lost. So even you are advancing in that stage, there is a danger of fall down from that point. So that is a point that Krishna is bringing here. And in text 60, Yatato hyapi kaunteya purushasya vipaschitaha indriyani pramadhini haranti prasabham manaha. The senses are so strong and impetuous, O Arjuna, that they forcibly carry away the mind even of a man of discrimination who is endeavoring to control them. Purport: there are many learned sages, philosophers and transcendentalists who try to conquer the senses. But in spite of their endeavors, even the greatest of them sometimes fall victim to material sense enjoyment due to agitated mind. Even Vishwamitra, a great sage and perfect yogi, was misled by Menaka into sex enjoyment. This is the example Prabhupada is giving. Although the yogi was endeavoring for sense control with severe types of penance and yoga practice, and of course there are so many similar instances in the history of the world, therefore it is very difficult to control the mind and senses without being fully Krishna conscious. Without engaging the mind in Krishna, one cannot cease such material engagements. A practical example is given by Sri Yamunacharya, a great saint and devotee, who says, Yadavadi mama cheta Krishna padaravinde navanavara sadhamani ujjatam rantumasit tadavadi bhata nari sangame smaryamane bhavati mukha vikara sushtu nishtivanam cha. Since my mind has been engaged in the service of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, and I have been enjoying an ever new transcendental humor, whenever I think of sex life with a woman, my face at once turns from it and I spit at the thought. So, this is very strong verse by Yamunacharya, but this is a very apt example that Prabhupada is giving the state of a self-realized soul about the param drishtva, like the higher taste. Here, let's complete the purport. I'll come back to this. Krishna consciousness is such a transcendentally nice thing that automatically material enjoyment becomes distasteful. It is as if a hungry man had satisfied his hunger by a sufficient quantity of nutritious eatables. Maharaja Ambarisha also conquered a great yogi, Durvasa Muni, simply because his mind was engaged in Krishna consciousness. Savai manah Krishna padara vindayor vachamsi vaikuntha gunanu varnane. So here, when Yamunacharya is saying about the comparison with a material, like mundane sex enjoyment, he is saying that since he is completely fixed in the service of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, that he has been enjoying an ever new transcendental humor. So this is the higher taste with which Yamunacharya is able to say that he is able to spit at the thought of having a sex life or a mundane sex life in its sense. So here Krishna is actually warning Arjuna, because in the previous verse when he told about in a neophyte stage how you have some regulations and restrictions for the sense enjoyment, But for advancing, it's not enough. So we need to have that higher taste and the dovetailment towards Krishna, or the activities towards the devotional services of Krishna, to completely overcome the temptations of like sense objects. So here Krishna is again warning that trying to forcefully control senses is not so easy. The senses are so strong and impetuous that they forcefully carry away the mind even of a man of discrimination. So Rajsham Prabhu tells here the man of discrimination is refers to like the typical Gnana yogis, where they try to control mind by various means. Even there are so many practices, even we know here also. Like the whole object of such yogic process is just to control mind without having any devotional service, Krishna or anything. They try to meditate into void or something like that. So such processes are not actually there in Shastras. The next verse, like Krishna comes to actual point, like if you want to have that, how do you fix mind? On what object you have to fix your mind to control it? Okay, so that is like Srila Prabhupada also gives the example of Vishwamitra here, who actually goes in that path. Like without Krishna, he goes in the mode of passion to create another planetary system for Trishanku and all these things, like where there is no surrendering towards Lord. That is why he keeps facing these obstacles from his own mind. He falls prey to anger, he falls prey to lust, which is in the form of Menaka. Then he gets angry and he starts cursing at sons of Vasishtha and the other demigods or anyone who did not come to his yajna. So even Vishwamitra is also in the process of becoming a Brahmarshi, which needs purification. But the path he chose is not dovetailing towards devotional activities of Krishna, but trying to go with the typical Gnana Yogi path. And there in that story it is so evident that the senses keeps empowering Vishwamitra until he comes to the point of accepting the humility and falling on the feet of sages Vaishnavas like Vasishtha. Then he comes to the platform of Brahmarshi. So that will be said in Krishna in this last in this verse, in this the last text in this series, text 61. Tani sarvani samyamya yukta asita matparaha vasehi yasyendriyani tasya pragna pratisthita. So Krishna tells here, one who restrains his senses, keeping them under full control and fixes his consciousness upon me, is known as a man of steady intelligence. So here Krishna uses specifically yukta asita matparaha. So one who restrains his senses, keeping them under full control and fixes his consciousness upon me, is known as a man of steady intelligence. So the purport that the highest conception of yoga perfection and Krishna consciousness is clearly explained in this verse. And unless one is Krishna conscious, it is not at all possible to control the senses. As cited above, the great sage Durvasa Muni picked a quarrel with Maharaja Ambarisha, and Durvasa Muni unnecessarily became angry out of pride and therefore could not check his senses. On the other hand, the king, although not as powerful a yogi as the sage, but a devotee of the Lord, silently tolerated all the sage's injustices and thereby emerged victorious. The king was able to control his senses because of the following qualifications as mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam 9.4.18-20. Savai manah Krishna padaravindayor vachamsi vaikunta gunanu varnane karau harer mandira marjanadishu Shrutim chakarachyuta satkotadaye Mukunda lingalaya darshane drishau Tadbhrityagatra sparsenga sangamam Granam cha tat pada saroja saurabhe Srimat tulasya rasanam tadarpite Padau hare kshetra padanuspar sarpane Siro hrishikesa padabhivandane Kamam cha dasyena tu kama kamyaya Yatottama sloka janasrayaratihi. So King Ambarisha is a pure devotee of Krishna. So these are the verses he says, and this is the translation of it. King Ambarisha fixed in his mind on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, engaged his words in describing the abode of the Lord, his hands in cleansing the temple of the Lord, his ears in hearing the pastimes of the Lord, his eyes in seeing the form of the Lord, his body in touching the body of the devotee, his nostrils in smelling the fragrance of the flowers offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, his tongue in tasting the tulsi leaves offered to him, his legs in traveling to the holy place where his temple is situated, his head in offering obeisances unto the Lord, and his desires in fulfilling the desires of the Lord, and all these qualifications made him fit to become a Matpara devotee of the Lord. So here King Ambarisha gave like how you can dovetail all your senses. So whatever like Brahmarshi Vishwamitra tried to do by forcefully doing tapasya or the what all Ashtanga yogis tried to do, King Ambarisha is already in that platform by doing all these activities. The word Matpara is most significant in this connection. How one can become Matpara is described in the life of Maharaj Ambarisha. Srila Baladev Vidyabhushana, a great scholar and Acharya in the line of Matpara, remarks Madbhakti Prabhavena Sarvendriya Vijaya Purvika Svatma Drishti Sulabheti Bhavaha. The senses can be completely controlled only by the strength of devotional service to Krishna. Also, the example of fire is sometimes given as a blazing fire burns everything within a room. Lord Vishnu, situated in the heart of a yogi, burns up all kinds of impurities. The Yoga Sutra also prescribes meditation on Vishnu and not meditation on the void. The so-called yogis who meditate on something other than the Vishnu form simply waste their time in a vain search after some phantasmagoria. We have to be Krishna conscious, devoted to the personality of Godhead. This is the aim of the real yoga. So these 4 verses actually summarizes, how we can, practically how we can control our senses in the path of devotional service. Like when King Ambarisha was saying about the activities, every sense is engaged. Similarly, like in our temple, we have Mangalarati every day at morning 4:30. So we actually wake up the Lord, welcoming the Lord, we have a nice kirtan, and then we chant for 2 hours, 16 rounds of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So there are many devotional activities that are there throughout the temple. Like there is prasadam serving, prasadam cooking, speaking about Krishna, listening about Krishna. Many activities, there are some devotees who offer, arti, and you can engage in Harinam. So all our material interests, which this is a perfect platform where we can dovetail all our interests in service of Lord Hari. So this is how we can situate in the like a sthita prajna, like a perfect consciousness, and also very pleasurably, very enjoyably, without any torture that a yogi has to go through. Pleasurably, we can control our senses by engaging in the devotional service of the Lord. So one way that we can get, if we are not having that and we are still having the material hankerings, is to get the higher taste. So there are many activities that many devotees get attracted to different activities at the temple. So the way we can replace is by higher taste. So I was hearing a lecture from Radheshyam Prabhu. So in India there is this huge train routes which goes for 30 hours or 40 hours or so. Once Radheshyam Prabhu and few devotees, they packed some prasad and they are going in a train, and the journey is about like 30 hours. That train journey was very like a long journey. So the first day they ate the rotis and they enjoyed it. But like when after like 16, 17 hours, the rotis became so, like very dry and tasteless, and they were not able to eat it. So then they called to the next coming station, and then they told that, hey, we are going from this station to that station. Can you arrange some prasad and all? And there was a local temple, and they sent like Rasham Prabhu and the devotees a huge feast, like rasmalais, like 4 or 5 puris, and all that. And so then as soon as the prasadam came, the devotee next to Rasham Prabhu took all the rotis that they packed and they started distributing to the the beggars in the train. So Rasham Prabhu told he was actually saying that in when this verse is being discussed, that because we got a nice fresh prasad which was like so savoring and all, we were very easily able to give up the dry rotis or the like whatever are the stale rotis to the other passengers or other beggars or homeless people in the train. But if suppose there was a delay and the new prasadam didn't come, they will be holding on to that rotis. So this is actually very good analogy that we can take it to in our lives, that if we are holding to some material tastes, that means we are not finding the higher taste in Krishna consciousness. So we can actually ask some senior devotees here, like, Prabhu, I am having this kind of hankerings regarding this. Like, how can I dovetail that in Krishna? Like how Krishna conscious activities. So that is like, how do I acquire the higher taste? That is the best way to have a well safe and sanctified path of self-realization offered by Bhagavad Gita, which is spoken from the lotus lips of Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. Thank you so much. Yeah, Hare Krishna. Raviteja. Raviteja.
Raviteja. Thank you very much, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
First time I'm hearing you, very thoughtful,
Yeah.
very thorough.
Thank you so much, bro.
We appreciate that.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, bro.
There are not many people, but people are listening on the YouTube.
This is yeah.
So with this we conclude our Saturday satsang today. And we might have prasadam, I don't know, outside or here.
You have a question? Yes, Prabhu. Gordon, bro.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, bro.
Thank you for the wonderful class. Thank you for the wonderful class, Raviteja Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
So I like how you made the point of Vishwamrita, the artificial renunciation, and a lot of devotees, they feel like, oh, I'm so detached from this and that. But you see a lot of, sometimes devotees, they fall down because, like you mentioned, there's no higher taste. So I was just appreciating that. But what if someone wants to give up a lot of their bad attachments? They don't have access to association of devotees. What would you advise them to do?
So, association is key. So, if devotees not have, if anyone who is not having association, it's actually very difficult. But nowadays, we have a good technology. And even though we are not directly in association of the devotees, we can hear Krishna Katha. All the Dravida Prabhu's classes are being telecasted, and you can get the knowledge of Sri Krishna, about the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. So we should try for the devotee association. But if there is no absolute place of the association, the chanting is the most effective way, because when we chant, the names of Lord Hari, we are actually taking the association of Krishna, basically. But the mood with which we have to chant is very important, and that mood was given by Srila Prabhupada. So we are trying to do our best in like reach this message throughout. Like we are distributing books, we are telecasting all the lectures online, the kirtans are online, and the best we are doing, the temple is doing. So if you are not in association, like chanting the names of Lord in the mood that is given by Vaishnava Acharyas is a way, and then we can pray for Krishna, to give the association and to overcome the temptations. And like Krishna will like definitely give that, like an opportunity for the association also. But one thing is, in these verses also Prabhupada mentions, this material world, like it's becoming more and more degraded. If you see, like even a decade before, we do not have this spread of like sense gratificatory temptations that are right now. So like anyone who is like hearing this message or so should try to like be in the association. That's what I could say.
In addition to that, they say I meet some devotees, they have tilak, they have kantimala, they this and that. And when I do have their association, they're doing the do-nots, So how do I distinguish between a real devotee and someone that's just, externally?
Yeah. So there are any devotee like who is chanting, we should respect them. If they are breaking the don'ts, the thing is we have vasanas which are coming from the previous lives. We should realize that whoever are coming under the devotional process are under shower. We are in the process of purification. Everyone has their own dirt that is there. And in this process, rather than finding faults, like a swan, which like if you like a golden swan, there is an example in Shastras where if it separates out milk from water, it only drinks even if it gives a mixture of milk and water, it only takes milk and leaves the water. So when you are in association and there are devotees who are like having faults, we should take good from them and not find faults with them. And you can, with senior devotees and all, there are the qualities of self-realized soul that is there in Bhagavad Gita will be manifested in them. So you cannot put up a show for a long time, that's for sure. And you can see that they are very safely situated, very like happily practicing. You can find those devotees and you can ask, Prabhu, how are you able to, like what is giving you strong faith, and how are you so joyous, and for me this anartha is troubling me. Do you have some solution like that? We have here, His Holiness Badrinath Swami Maharaj, Raviteja Prabhu, Vijay Prabhu, and many seniors, like we can take their, we can consult them. Yes, Prabhu.
Devotee is falling down sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So I've seen some examples of that from my. So I think what I've observed is that in the Krishna consciousness or any path, making progress on that path is normally a slow process, but falling down can be very rapid. So the slightest of your, giving up on the values and you can fall. So one thing, at least what I've seen is, this progress on the Krishna consciousness, you need to keep checking what you are doing versus how much love it is developing. Just by doing certain thing, it helps. It helps because it helps you to protect from engaging senses in other things, which is the good part. But you have to check your net positive gain. As you do an organic growth on that path, then you are less likely to fall.
Yeah, Prabhu. That's a very good point, Prabhu. Actually, Bhaktivinoda Thakur tells every Ekadasi, you have to introspect. How was your sadhana? How are your thoughts are? You need to sit and introspect what was the change from last Ekadasi to this Ekadasi. Did I progress, or am I doing like blasphemy or other don'ts that are given from Vaishnavacharyas. So,
And like they say, if you don't make an effort, you are actually not going to maintain. You are going to slide.
yeah.
So even to maintain that level or increase, you have to make
Yes,
effort.
Prabhu. Jai. Very nice.
Thank you,
Prabhu.
Prabhu.
Thank you so much.
That was an exceptional answer, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Your mercy, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.